How you doing? We should be live. Yes. Hi. So, this is it, everyone. This is the Q&A live through YouTube. And what's up, Theory Plebe? Theory Plebe is in here. Faith is in here. Good to see you all in here. And today, like I said, is the Q&A, and it's really the wrap up, the culmination of all these videos I've been making in this series for spiritual health for leftists. And so we made 8 videos. And wait, hold on. Let me see here. We had the introduction, spiritual health for leftists. Then we did mindfulness for leftists and meditation for leftists, journaling for leftists, shadow work for leftists, self-care for leftists, and then loving kindness. Oh no, and then gratitude, and then loving kindness. And I had a lot of fun. I knew I wanted to do this a while back for plenty of reasons. First of all, because it's like, I like talking about this stuff. But as for why put it online and at this point in time, is because I felt like so many people were talking about this. Yo, what's up, Solitariat? I'm so glad the Solitariat is here. And yeah, so I noticed so many people were talking about the need for some sort of different kind of health. There's emotional health, mental health, and I saw a couple even saying the words spiritual and spirit and all that. And I realized there's a little bit of a hunger here, and I felt like, okay, I got to talk about this. And so I planned out these videos, and funny enough, it was also during a lot of drama that was going down online as well. And what's funny is like there was a lot of drama going on Twitter right when I did the journaling, while I was like writing up the journaling for leftist one the day before. And I realized, yo, this like totally fits, because a lot of what I had already planned to say in the journaling for leftist stuff is like, we all need to vent, but you need to have somewhere to vent it that isn't online, where you could be so easily misunderstood and attacked. And it just totally fit with what was going on around the time. And it was even interesting because I got a couple comments where people were saying like, your videos right now is really helpful for me right now because of how like overwhelming Twitter is right now. And so it turned out to be pretty beneficial for a lot of people. And I got like some of the most kind comments that I've gotten in a long time on these videos. And it's been being misunderstood and attacked as my jam. Hey, yo, it's all good. I love you, Solitariat. And I even noticed, like, I think it's because I was talking about something very, I guess, heartwarming. It can be heartwarming to like hear some of this stuff. I think some people, it's like that brought out the heartwarmingness out of their hearts, and they left some really kind comments. And so I felt like I wanted to wrap this all up with some questions for y'all. So y'all can start typing some questions if you'd like. Let me think. Oh, here's an interesting tidbit. The original idea, the first idea I had for this, it was to call this whole series actually Spiritual Health for SJWs. And I kind of touched on where I was coming from with that in an introduction video. And I was like, how to go from SJW to revolutionary. And it was really like, my first idea was, okay, there's a lot of really angry SJWs who individualize everything. And I wanted to talk about like, okay, let's help you out of that through spiritual health, through these spiritual practices. And then as I was like getting ready, I felt like I don't want to deal with people like misunderstanding what I mean by SJW, or thinking I'm like trying to call out the left, or using a word that gets used too much by the right. And I was like, whatever. All right, leftists, I don't need to be scandalous. But I want to know your thought on physical healthcare, from yoga to self-massage to strength training. Physical self-care, I think, is also obviously important. Something that I have been, I think, lacking in for most of my life. I mean, it's funny, like I was one of those people who like grew up really skinny, really or what was it? What's the word? high metabolism my whole life, and so I felt like I could eat whatever I want, I could do whatever I want, and then I became an adult. I was like, "Oh crap, I have to actually start caring." And then and there's times in my life where I obviously did care. I was vegan for a while. That was fun. And I was like probably like the best shape I've ever been in when I was vegan, and then I just kind of got over it. And it's something though that's always been like kind of like something I need and I want, but I don't know enough about it to ever, and I don't apply it to my life enough to ever advise people in it. But I know the solitariat straight up swole. He really is swole. And yeah, I'll be doing a video on strength training and nutrition for commies. Yeah, I would love to collab on that. I was thinking that too. Um, I feel like we could definitely. There's a lot of things I feel like we could collab on, and also yoga. I know I have like a few friends who are yoga instructors, and I've done yoga a little bit, and that's something. It's interesting. Like I feel like in the same way meditation is, where when people discover meditation, it's like, oh my god, my whole life has changed, and this is the key and the secret to everything. Why didn't I know? I feel like yoga is the physical version of that, where it's like, oh my god, this was actually what I needed my entire life. I remember when I first started doing yoga, I haven't done it in a long time, but and going to different classes, I remember having the most mind-blowing experience where I went and I was really tired and exhausted and I was considering not going, and then I did yoga and I came out more energized than I had felt in months. And I was like, how does that work? It was just mind-blowing how this all works. But it very much is like, I think there's so many people that wrap up themselves in their accomplishments, what they need to do in the world, how they need to be perceived in the world, what they need to know and tell others in order to climb up social ladders, that it's so easy to just forget about our health, all types of our health. And I very much, I'm driving. It's all good, Theory Plebe. I've what was I gonna say? It's funny, even like in pastor world, when I was a pastor, well, I wasn't technically an ordained minister, but my job was as a pastor. Um, that distinction only matters if you're in that world. Outside, like if I were to explain everything I did to people outside of evangelicals, and be like, "Oh yeah, you're a pastor." But in that world, it's funny, there's even this talk of like the pastoral gut that develops, where you see all the time somebody joins in a ministry role, and a couple months later, their belly is way bigger. And it's like, because now all your entire day-to-day life is about preparing sermons and talking to people, and then and reading a lot and studying and all that, and suddenly it's like it becomes so easy to just spend all your day sitting and doing nothing else. Dating for leftists, I don't know if I've seen someone do that. I feel like I would have no idea what to say for dating for leftists. I don't even know how to date, yo. I'm clueless on that. But and so yeah, it's just funny. It was like I think I've always been in environments where physical health especially, was just like put on last priority. And Theory Plebe, did he do something on dating? Did you do something on dating? I don't know. He's driving, so I know he can't exactly. That's a solitary ass right now. But also, by the way, Theory Plebe is driving here to my house. So that's pretty cool. Coming from Northern California. So after this, around it's 5:09 p.m. Um, they them, and they are coming here. And after this, at 8 p.m., we're going to do another live stream here on Theory Plebe's channel. So make sure everyone, you see Theory Plebe, that little purple avatar right there, go subscribe to Theory. Theory, I love theory stuff. Really do. And that's gonna be fun. So my pastors were all swole. That's kind of like yeah, that's always funny too, to see like it's like I feel like I hardly ever saw a moderately healthy pastor. It was either someone whose what's it called? Whose health was kinda on the last priority list or was straight up swole. And those ones were interesting. Violet Press, just tuning in here. I apologize if you've addressed this. What is the importance of religion in information societies like Canada and the US? Why do we need spirituality in our lives? In information societies. Well, first of all, I've realized what's kind of funny. It's like it depends on what you mean by religion. And what's funny is it reminded me throughout, especially these videos that I've been doing in this series, I've gotten multiple comments where people would be like, "Hey, I'm an atheist, but I love everything you're saying." And one of the first thoughts that come to my mind is I think one of the reasons people feel the need to completely separate themselves from all religion is because so many religious environments like to be extremely gatekeepy with the way they talk about things. And it's like, yo, this is the only way to be spiritual, only way to be in relationship with this God, only way to live out this faith, just this. And if you step outside of this, you're either now a part of some sort of spiritual version of things that is against what we're doing, or you're just completely out of all of it. And so people so often feel like, okay, if I ever leave this environment, because they're telling me this is the only way to do religion, and this is the absolute best way to do religion, and is the best thing ever. If I ever leave, then that must mean I got to leave the whole thing then. And so they do. And that sometimes makes me feel bad because we don't teach people how much room there actually is in religion. And so I think for so many millennia, these symbols and ways of framing the world helped people move outside of themselves and choose love and care for one another and choose justice. And it provided a narrative to continue to push ourselves outwards and care for one another. And I feel like it could be easy. We could easily be like, yeah, we now know that like a lot of that stuff was made up by humans. It wasn't like dropped out of the sky by God to the humans. They just made it up. So let's just let it all go. I think that's a bad idea. In the same way that I feel like it would be a bad idea to say, hey, so all these like recipes for all these dishes of food is just made up. We don't have to make them this way. People just made all that up. So therefore, I'm going to only make my own recipes, my own dishes, and not think about anyone else's because all that's made up. I think a more responsible thing to do is to engage and interact with the ways that humans have created meaning and chosen healthy lives in order to pull themselves outwards and love one another and care for one another and choose justice and integrate what works. It doesn't mean you have to include all of it and doesn't mean you have to take any of it literally, but be able to be fully aware of what all this comes from. And there's so many people out there who have experienced through religion, have experienced such heaviness that the religion is their life. They have no other way of framing things other than through certain mystical experience they had through their lives. And I think we shouldn't automatically just say, "Oh, well, that was fake, right?" Like we should be able to find a way to integrate their experiences to remind them, "Hey, choose love and justice with your faith." Like I love how Rosa Luxemburg, Jewish atheist, wrote this essay, "The Socialism in the Churches," and she talked about how she could have easily been like, "Okay, so we're doing these strikes, these worker strikes, and the pastors are all preaching against us." She could have easily then wrote an essay about how everything these preachers believe is wrong and incorrect, and that in that way to try to come back at them. But instead, she said, okay, let me go through your New Testament and through church history to tell you your guy, Jesus, would have wanted you to be for these worker strikes, to be for the people, before the proletariat. And so it was really interesting. She was not religious whatsoever, but was able to use it to get people on board. But anyway, okay, not really a question, Faith, but a comment on the last video. I have a really hard time with loving kindness for myself. Even my enemies are easier. That's heavy. Yeah, I feel like part of that comes from a very individualistic culture. Like I remember reading about how it, this idea of like, well, no, I shouldn't show love to myself. That's like narcissistic. That's like being full of myself. That's selfish or all that. That's only really in the West and Eastern cultures. They're like, yeah, of course I gotta love myself. How else am I supposed to love anybody else? Yeah, of course I love myself. But in Western cultures, it's like, what? Why would you say that? That's like too much. And I feel like that stems from our individualistic culture that tells us you have to be doing such and such and such, and if you're not doing that, then you have less value in society. And so we always feel like we're not doing enough, we're not being enough, we don't have enough. And if we were to say I love myself, then that would be welcoming and embracing our flaws. And we can't do that, because if I embrace my flaws, then I'll never change, and then I'll never be what society wants me to be. And I don't think it works that way. I think by loving ourselves, we were able to be what we want to be. But solitary, is it true that evangelicals largely ignore the Bible and just focus on the weird idea of Jesus? Um, I think they focus on just parts of the Bible. Like, something that's kind of blown my mind is I've realized that evangelicals who never had any sort of like actual formal Bible education, there's parts of the Bible that they don't know is in there. The biggest example I've seen is the exile in the Old Testament. It's like God frees the slaves from Egypt, then brings them to Mount Sinai, gives them the commands, gives them, and then eventually they get this land and then are told, live out these commands, take care of the poor and the oppressed, maintain your freedom and maintain justice so that you don't become like Egypt that I just freed you from and oppress others. And if you don't, then you will be punished and be overtaken by neighboring nations. And uh, eventually you got King Solomon building a temple for God using slaves. So of course they're all kicked out. They're overtaken by Babylon, and they got kicked out of the land, taken in by Babylon, and they are crying out to God, save us again, help us again, rescue us again, now that we are under captivity of Babylon. And all the prophecies that people point to in reference to Jesus coming or a Messiah coming are those prophecies saying, please save us again. And God is going to restore us once again within this new captivity we're in under Babylon. And anyway, I say all that because I realized a lot of evangelicals don't even know that the exile happened. It's like they think there's the Egypt stuff, Exodus, Mount Sinai, and some kings, and then they all just kind of waited around, and then Jesus came. And I think part of it, perhaps, is in Catholic churches and Eastern Orthodox churches and in mainline Protestant churches, there's a revised common lectionary or any sort of lectionary, common lectionary, where it goes through the Bible and we're able to say, um, okay, so this Sunday, you're going to read this part from the Psalms, this part from the New Testament, and this part from the Gospels. And so every week, that's already laid out. There's year A, year B, and year C. So by the end of year C, you go through most of the Bible. And so every Sunday in these Catholic, Orthodox, and mainline Protestant churches, they have to read from that scripture and develop a sermon based on it. And most evangelical churches, it's whatever I feel like preaching on that Sunday. And so that's where you get like topical series sermons of like, so this month we're going to do a series on dating. This month we're going to do a series on the holiness of God. This month we're going to do, and in their sermons, they're just jumping all over the Bible, just grabbing scriptures to justify the topic that they already wanted to talk about without instead how others do it. This is the passages we have to read today. How can I develop a sermon based off that? So I think that's part of it too, and that results in plenty of evangelical churches having a pastor who never ever mentions huge chunks of the Bible because they don't have to. 'Cause I feel like that's a big part of it. But Sarah Billings, what would you say is the most important video in the series? Trying to get my mom into the series. She's a Christian, but pretty apolitical. Hey, aren't most of our moms? um, hmm. Maybe I don't know. Maybe someone else would be able to answer this better, but I guess probably the self-care for leftist stuff because I talk about Sabbath. So I know Christians like that. Yeah, let's just say that one, self-care for leftists, or if not, then the first one, spiritual health for leftists, probably. Yeah, I don't know. Um, but that's cool that you're showing your mom, and I think, yeah, okay. So, which is how they get the prosperity gospel by ignoring the actual Bible. Yeah, I hate prosperity gospel too. It's uh it's funny. Benny Hinn, a huge proponent of prosperity gospel teachings, big televangelist, that dude that always slaying people, like just do that with his white coat and people would just be slain in the spirit. That guy, white hair, he recently just came out as against prosperity gospel, came out and said, I was wrong. I was terribly wrong. And everyone who still preaches prosperity gospel stuff is wrong. And he was like, I'm never again going to say, give $1,000. And he said he realized that by framing it that way, he was making it seem like the gospel was for sale, being able to say, if you just give $1,000, then you'll have everything you need. Yeah. Also, a lot of prosperity gospel is rooted in new age, or what's it called? New thought. Is that what it's called? Um, which was like from the new thought movement, or higher thought, which was like the late 1800s, which gave rise to a lot of new age thought, a lot of uh, Pentecostalism that talked about just name it and claim it. If you just say it, then it'll happen. So that spread into a lot of Pentecostalism and a lot of random new age stuff. And I think that could be pretty super individualistic, obviously. And I think it's pretty dangerous because, and it's like people get trapped in it because every time that the thing that they said doesn't happen, they could just easily be told, oh, it's because you didn't have enough faith. That was why. You just need to have more faith next time. See that documentary on the family? Yeah, I did a video on the family. And what was it called? I called it Ex Evangelical Breaks Down the Family. And the thumbnail said Christofascism. And that video's gotten a lot of views, more than all my other ones, because it's popping right now, that documentary. And I could see the analytics of how people found it, and most of the views came from people YouTube searching the family Netflix. So there's a bunch of people coming on wanting to know more. But that was trippy. And I realized that I I think what was especially scary for me with that thing is that a lot of the way that people talked in that boys' house was what I heard growing up in certain Bible study settings. I remember having a friend that was like unironically would say that we should have a theocracy. And I know when he said that, what he was meaning was that we just need a good Christian righteous man as the president, and when it comes to all the decisions, he'll just pray about it and then God will tell him and then everything will be fine. It's just so ridiculous. And I or a lot of the stuff about like just breaking yourself down to absolute subservience and obedience in order to do what you need to do for God. I heard a lot of that type of talk. But yeah, it's very much Christo-fascism. That whole thing, Doug Coe, the leader of that whole thing, very much a Christo-fascist. Very much yikes. Um, I see that you have linked to a source on meditation in your description. Do you think that Christianity and Buddhism are compatible? Um, the reminds me of Jesus camp. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, okay. First off, the first thing that comes to mind is Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Vietnamese Buddhist monk. His book, Living Living Buddha, Living Christ, was I loved that book so much. And I think maybe you'll find that interesting too if you check that out. But I I feel like first of all, Jesus and the Buddha. Oh, there you go. I think I agree with everything in it. You said you have that book. I was gonna say it's like first of all, Jesus and the Buddha were both Eastern dudes, and it's funny. I've heard people. I think there was a book that was called this, and I've heard other people say it. How like Buddhism helped me come back to Christianity. I think there's a couple books of people sharing that story that it's like they grew up in Christianity, usually evangelicalism, and then they left because they didn't like it. And then they got into Buddhism, and then that helped them look at Jesus with a whole new light. And I think it's because they start to get into Eastern ways of thinking and Eastern ways of framing the world. And then they realize, oh yeah, Jesus was one of those guys too. And then they realize, and then they see all the Jesus quotes as with a totally different lens. Cause it's like, oh, of course. Why did I let people convince me that Jesus talked like an American Western guy? Definitely not. And it was, so I feel like Buddhism is compatible with a lot of things because there is no God, especially Zen Buddhism, which seems to always come back to just breathe. And I feel like it's because of that, it's like you could do Buddhist practices with any religion um, pretty easily. So, yeah, I very much value Buddhism and I very much love Thich Nhat Hanh. And so the video was really interesting. A lot can be applied to Brazil's situation, how Bolsonaro got there. Yep. Also have two masters. One Message by Roy Amor. I haven't heard of that one. That sounds really interesting, though. What's your take on Camille Pagula's idea that Christianity, Catholicism in particular, is a pagan religion? I don't know about that. I haven't heard of that. Uh, which is a focus on images. I think I've heard people talk about some pagan connections, but I haven't heard of that person. But of course, I mean, it's all mixed in there because it's like I feel like early Christianity seemed to it seems like there was two ways of getting Christianity integrated into a new tribe of people throughout history. Either just colonize them and just force them to believe in Jesus, or go into the society. And this is really how a lot of Buddhists do it too, and talk about what they believe in, how they do things, what their culture is like, what their faith is like, what their spiritual practice are like, and then be like, hey, we have similar practices, we have similar images, we have similar symbols, and they just kind of integrate together, like Christmas happening on during the winter solstice. I think that initial event was just saying, hey, you celebrate the sun, or what was it? Or maybe I'm thinking of Easter. I think I'm thinking of Easter actually, where it's like you celebrate the sun coming up again and celebrating the rising of the sun, and we celebrate the rising of a different kind of sun, if you know what I mean. No, I was kidding. But it was like we also celebrate a whole, okay, yeah, it is Christmas, a whole idea of birth, death, resurrection through the symbol of Jesus' life, and we participate in that life through our community. And you all do the same thing with in a different way, more focused around the sun. So let's have our religious festivals and holidays around the same time. That'll be helpful. Now it's talked about as if like, yo, Christians co-opted the solstice. And I'm sure it eventually became like, as Christians became more and more in power, it was like, yeah, we do celebrate Christmas and Easter with pagan holidays all together, but let's just slowly edge out the pagan stuff because let's not confuse people. Whatever. I've studied about some some about Canaanite religion, and I've noticed some of those symbols in the story of Jesus. Interesting. I don't know if I've studied Canaanite religion. I've studied a little bit of Sumerian religion. I don't know if it's probably not the same thing, but yeah, that I think I think a lot of initial symbolism was looking at the world and seeing what are the truths that we all come to in different ways, and saying, okay, we come to this truth through Jesus. And not the same thing. Oh yeah, I wouldn't say they're the same thing either. And oh yeah, sorry, Sumerian and Canaanite. But the what was I gonna say? The Yeah, realizing how is truth found in several ways through different methods. We found it through Jesus and the life of Jesus. Let's celebrate that. And I think it's strange how people can try to make it seem like, no, our religion was the most original one. And if there's any similarities, it's because they copied us. And I think, yeah, it doesn't really make sense. All right, comrades, I'm out. I got to work on some takes. All right, so hit me up about collabing. That'll be really cool. And yeah, I feel like I feel like a lot of this comes down to also like these Eastern, more communal societies. I think we're okay with more uncertainty and some a little bit of contradictions every now and then, and being able to come at things without needing to individualize everything and be like, okay, we need to have the exact right one, like post enlightenment thinking of like it needs to be proven exactly true and all the evidence, and that is how we know what truth is. Capital T, truth, absolute truth. I think a lot of that thinking, yeah, is all post enlightenment when it comes to that thinking being involved in religion. Can you offer some insight into the differences between Buddhist meditation and Christian contemplation? I guess Christian contemplation would fall under the category of, I guess, heart centered meditation and I guess visualization meditation. Mm, that's all I can think of right now. But I know, yeah, it's a lot of heart centered meditation. It's a lot of experiencing oneness with Christ. A lot of and if there are mantras, it'll be like the Jesus prayer, like Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner, and over and over and over. And being able to, yeah, experience oneness with God, experience oneness with Christ, oneness with the Holy Spirit, and visualizing those things and feeling those things. And Buddhist meditation seems to be very much about emptying your mind of images and symbols and words, achieving a state where you've moved beyond those things. And I think both are really helpful. It's just like different purposes, I guess. But it reminds me, what was this book I was reading? I think it was a book called Christian Zen. In the beginning, the guy said he was a Christian minister and he went to this Buddhist temple where people would meditate all the time, and he thought it was really interesting. It really captured him. And so he got a teacher to teach him meditation, and they became friends over time, and he developed his own meditation practice and learned how different it was and enjoyed it and loved it. And even at the beginning, he would say, hey, I feel like my way of doing this is thinking about Christ. And or what was it? There's a story where he was like, I think the teacher was like trying to get him to think of himself, the deepest parts of himself, and then he said, "Well, I usually think about Christ," and the teacher was like, "Yeah, same thing, whatever." And over time, he doing during that practice, he realized, oh yeah, it's all kind of the same thing. And then after a long time, the Buddhist teacher was like, I would love for you to take me to one of your Christian gatherings so I could learn how you Christians do meditation practices. And he was overcome with sadness and shame because he knew, yes, Christianity has a rich tradition of Christian contemplation and meditation, but it's not accessible the way Buddhism makes it. It's not at the forefront of Christianity anymore. And if when you do find it, it's like a super random hidden thing behind the scenes. And that made him like realize, okay, I got to dedicate my life to figuring out how to do it in a Christian way. And then he wrote that book. Uh, No. Let me think. Not Thomas Merton. I know Thomas Merton did something similar. I don't think it was Thomas Merton. It was William Johnston. That's who it was. I just randomly found the book in a library one day, and I read like the first quarter of it, and then I left and never picked it up again. Yeah, conversation taking that on about contemplation, meditation. Yeah, I haven't read Thomas Merton, but I feel like I would really like him, especially because, um, yeah, Thomas Merton's cool. Everything I've heard of him, that's what I'm trying to say. Everything I've heard about him has been awesome. But let me see here. What else? What else? What else? What else? Let me see here. I was kind of scared when I put out the last two in this series, Gratitude for Leftists and Loving Kindness for Leftists, because I felt like if you're not if you don't know like kind of how I come at things, and if you haven't seen some of the other videos in the series, excuse me, those two videos can be easily misconstrued and like have people be like, "What are you, some sort of liberal?" or uh, stop individualizing things, because just talking about spirituality, like we're so used to it, people talking about it in an individualistic way, that just using certain words can just bring those memories back for people and think that that's what I'm doing. And with the self-care for leftists video, I had a couple people respond to that like very negatively, talking to me as if almost as if they were commenting on the wrong video. Like that's how much projection was going on. Like they just like took certain words I said and just immediately thought I was doing something else and criticized me for it. But it's I know it's a tough topic, and it could get a lot of people very uncomfortable, especially because how many people are used to this being talked about as a way to just get people to accept the status quo. Like, hey, don't worry about society. Don't worry about your problems, your financial struggles, the need for a job, your need for healthcare, your depression. Just focus on yourself. Just meditate, just meditate, just journal, just pray, and that'll help you feel better. And it's like we're so used to that kind of stuff that it's like I know some people could be immediately afraid that that's the direction I'm headed by just bringing up these topics. And Faith said, "Yeah, it's become hard to talk about trauma because of the way the right has used the word triggered." Oh yeah, I imagine. What was it? I noticed I go to this Christian community in Santa Barbara every Wednesday night, and I'm really good friends with the guy who leads it too. And I've noticed whenever he talks about like trauma triggers, he actually uses the word activated. Like we don't want to. He'll say like probably shouldn't say this. We don't want to activate people, or we shouldn't do this way in case it activates certain people, or this kind of thing activates people. And I realized over time he's using that word the same way we use the word triggered. And I realized, oh, well, that's a cool little other word to use when if we ever get to a place where the word triggered is completely ruined. But anyway, the socialist Sangha, I'm glad you're here. The Christian concept of grace seems very similar to the Buddhist Metta. Oh, yeah, I agree. But in conversation with my Christian friends, I'm told that grace cannot come from humans. It is something only God can give. Let me come back to that. I'm going to keep reading. I think Sarah said, I think it's easy for leftists to get trapped in cynical lines of thought. I know that's a problem for me. Yeah, for me too. And Social Song, I said, is this true? The concept is foreign to me because in Buddhism, metta is something that everyone is encouraged to give, not something that is reserved to the divine. Let me look up something real quick. In Ephesians is a big one that people point to when it comes to talk of grace. Ephesians 1. Yeah, I had this right here just in case, and it proved to be useful. Let me see here. Okay. In Ephesians 1, verse 11, and Christ we have also obtained an inheritance, having been destined according to the purpose of him who accomplishes all things according to his counsel and will, so that we who We who were first to set our hope on Christ might live for the praise of his glory. In him you also, when you heard the word. Sorry, I might have to skip here. I think I'm reading the wrong part. Where is it? Oh, sorry. It was up there. He destined us for the adoption as his children through Jesus Christ, according to the good pleasure of his will, to the praise of his glorious grace that he freely bestowed on us in the beloved. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses that he lavished on us, his according to the riches of his grace that he lavished on us. I remember there being a part where it talks about, hold on. I know a better verse, way better verse. Hold on. He doesn't use the word grace, but he uses the word love. Um, I feel like okay. I feel like grace. I'm thinking of what. How are we even defining grace? I would define grace as love and acceptance, unmerited blessing and love and acceptance, undeserved love and embrace and acceptance. And I think of First John 4. I quoted this in the loving kindness video too, where it's like, let us love one another because love is from God. First John 4, verse 7. Beloved, let us love one another because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. And then later said, no one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us and his love is perfected in us. And so I feel like there is this formula. Maybe it's not explicitly spelled out with the word grace, but I know for love, there is this formula of like constantly receiving love from God. And because of that, we love one another. And when we love one another, that is literally the manifestation of God through our love for one another. And I feel like grace is one of the ways, I guess, that we love one another. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly where someone would be coming from to say grace cannot come from humans. It's something only God can give. I feel like that could be coming from a way of reading the Bible as like of separating people of like yeah, I don't know but yeah, whatever. I don't believe that. And I would say I've seen similarities within Metta as well, and being able to. But I guess what Christianity and that idea of love and grace would add to Metta is that it comes from God first. It's like all that, but let's add this clip before that of God loving first, and and then through that, God is within all those little relationships of love. Seems like they might be thinking of grace as some kind of forgiveness or sin or something. Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking of right now too when I said separating of like is that yeah, because I think I've heard people say that too, where it's like only God can forgive people. It's not a movie with Ryan Gosling. Only God forgives, um, and I think that yeah, I don't know. It just seems like very dualistic thinking, very closed-mindedness, very fear-based. I don't know. Sapphic anarchy. I'm curious about your thoughts on forgiveness, particularly when it comes to abuse survivors. Oh, hold on. I have an answer for that. But Socialist Sangha said, I might be coming from that idea. They believe unconditional love is impossible because man has fallen. Yeah, that's bogus. Okay, no. I'm gonna answer Sapphic Anarchy's question first, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about our fallen nature, which is not biblical. Okay. For forgiveness, the way I see it is we need forgiveness, not so you can stop being mean, or not so we can stop holding things against me because I said sorry. Forgive me already. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being able to be free from the anger that we harbor because of what was done to us. Being able to move on from that so that we could be free from it, and choosing to forgive them within us. Not, it doesn't have to be calling them up or reaching out to them or writing the letter, hey, I just want to let you know I forgive you. I don't think any of that is necessary. I think there's some relationships where it is necessary, like certain family relationships or certain close friends, where especially if what they did to you was like a mistake. I guess abuse wouldn't fall under that category, but if it's like, I'm thinking of like arguments and stuff like that, or misunderstanding, and it's like, of course, go and reconcile. But when it's abuse, that's a whole other category. But I think at the same time, forgiveness needs to happen. But in order for you to move on, not to let them off. And I would say too how important boundaries is. And it's like sometimes I've heard someone say sometimes you need to forgive and call the police, not one or the other. And don't let people say because you called the police, oh, you didn't forgive them. Oh, you don't love them. You don't blah blah blah. No, you could say, no, I totally forgive them. I've let it go. And I called the police. And I told somebody about it. And I made sure that um, they got what they needed to happen. And the so boundaries is extremely important. And I would say when it comes to boundaries, boundaries should always be set up in order to protect your health, in order to protect your well-being. Absolutely. And don't let anybody make you feel bad for that. And I would say, as for the other extreme, where I know people who like just love cutting people off, it's like you accidentally offend them through a misunderstanding, and they're like, "Oh, nope, done. I'm cutting you off. I gotta keep my own health in mind and have boundaries up," and then they end up with no friends because they're cut everyone off for little things. I would say boundaries should be set up to protect your health and well-being, but not be set up to protect your ego. When you just have boundaries just so you could believe that you were right about everything, that's a bad move. But when it comes to the point where somebody is abusing you, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, boundaries are extremely necessary. But of course, you need to go through that necessary process of forgiveness so you could be fully free. And Faith said, as an abuse survivor, they believe. Um, whoa, sorry, I lost it. As an abuse survivor who has been through that process, I think Damon is right. You want to forgive and heal so that abuse doesn't continue to rule your life. Yeah, that makes sense. The way I was taught about forgiveness in my church was trying to make abuse survivors feel bad for having boundaries. Yeah. It's a toxic way of understanding love and forgiveness and reconciliation. It's like, and even people who are guilty of abusing others, it's like I believe there's a road to redemption for them too. As a Christian, I believe that there is a road to that they need to go on of redemption and forgiveness of their own actions, and to find a community that can love and accept them despite their past. But when something like abuse happens, that community that they find reconciliation and probably shouldn't be in the same community with the person that they abused. That probably means they need to find another community who can love and embrace them and accept them, not to force them together and then get mad at the abuse survivor for not wanting, for feeling uncomfortable around them. That's ridiculous. But the fallen thing, by the way, that we're all fallen, humans are fallen. First of all, okay, if you just grab like a random Christian Bible and you go to Genesis, let's see if this one has it. Genesis 3. There's all these headings. Ooh, this is good. Okay, this Bible is NRSV. NRSV, I think, is the most accurate according to academics. And so there's things that are in every Bible that they make sure not to put in because it's a mistake that's in every Bible. But I was going to say, in most Bibles, when you open it up to Genesis 3, the heading says the fall. And that's the only place in the Bible that refers to the fall of man, in the heading that was added later. This one actually says the first sin and its punishment, which I think is a little bit more accurate. But first of all, original sin, that whole idea comes really from St. Augustine. I think there's a video I had where I mentioned about how I don't believe. I think it was the video of why I can't be an evangelical, and I mentioned something about not believing in original sin, and I had an old evangelical peer comment on my Facebook and was like something like, "Why don't you believe in original sin?" And I was like, I don't want to get in an argument with this dude, so I just said Original sin is more of an Augustinian idea, and I'm a Christian, not an Augustinian. And then he didn't respond, so I was like, cool, got away with it. But I think it's first of all, it's like the whole idea of original sin and man being fallen comes from the story of Adam and Eve. So I think we should allow Jewish interpretation to have the priority here for how we interpret Old Testament stories. And nowhere in Judaism do they see it as like there's an original sin or a fall or whatever. And I remember hearing somebody say, they heard a rabbi say that, like a Reformed Jewish rabbi say, for us, original sin, we would only use that word to say, oh, wow, what you did there, that was a pretty original sin. I didn't even think about that. I've never thought of that. That's an original sin right there. That's the only way they would ever use any concept with the words original sin. And I think, yeah, I think it's very, very troubling and also, so St. Augustine is who originated it, but then it didn't really get popularized until the Reformation, really. And by that point, it's like the doctrines that were laid out by the reformers was being done by a bunch of lawyers. So I think it was a way easier for them to frame it that way. But I've seen the Lost Books of Adam and Eve. No, but maybe I have. Is that like a Gnostic thing? Of Adam. Let me see here. If this is what I think it is, this was probably a text written centuries after Jesus by a group of Gnostic Christians. A group of Gnostic Christians wrote a lot of stuff, and I feel like the stuff we read from Gnostic Christians, like the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Proto-Evangelion of James, and probably this, I don't think people should read as like, whoa, they had this secret knowledge. I don't think they're trying to say, yo, we found out the secrets. And I don't think we should read it as like, yo, these people were just lying to people. They're trying to make people think this stuff happened that they wrote about. I think that just shows that a lot of Christian communities had such a deep love for the stories of Jesus that they decided to make some of their own. And nobody saw it as like they're trying to deceive anybody. So I think it was just I think the Lost Books of Adam and Eve is probably just that. I think I read bits of it a long time ago. I don't know. There was a period where I read like almost every Gnostic text I could find because I was really interested. But Sapphic Anarchy, any thoughts on hell? Yeah, Christian fan fiction. Yeah, and it wasn't a big deal back then, I don't think. It's like there's a lot of that. It was just part of your faith, creating some fan fiction. Any thoughts on hell? I know it's a broad topic. Hell is one of the biggest problems I have with Christianity. I can't comprehend eternal punishment or how that could be fair. So, I got a book for you. Or maybe not. I don't know. Maybe this isn't a good book. I just got it. I haven't read it, but I love the introduction. So I was about to recommend it based on the introduction. Then I thought maybe that's a bad idea. What's his name? David Bentley Hart is a Christian anarcho-communist, and he just put out a book called That All Shall Be Saved. Wait, let me double check that. All shall saved. Yeah, That All Shall Be Saved. And in the introduction of that, he mentioned something that I think is a lot of people don't realize, that first of all, the idea of a Christian universalism, or the idea of that all shall be saved, has existed within Christianity ever since its birth and all the way up until now. And even in the 4th century, Saint Basil of Caesarea wrote that the mass of Christians of his time in the 4th century believed that hell wasn't eternal and that all would be saved. And a lot of evangelicals don't like talking about that. Also, it's primarily an evangelical thing. I mean, of course, Catholics believe in hell, but the way they understand hell, there's a lot more leeway because they also believe in prayer for the dead. And the so it's like I remember seeing this video where this Catholic was saying, "Yeah, we believe in a hell, but we just don't believe anybody's there because we pray for everybody." Or even there's the Fatima prayer in the Rosary is, "Oh my Jesus, save us from the fires of hell, lead all souls to heaven, especially those in most need of your mercy." It's like every rosary you're praying, hey, get all the peeps out of hell and put them in heaven. Every rosary. And so Catholics believe God actually listens to every single one of those rosaries, and therefore they probably aren't there. I mean, I guess not all Catholics, but I know that a chunk of them do. But the um oh yeah, so I was gonna say it's like sometimes people will say, hey, the belief in a literal eternal hell where people are tortured for all forever and ever and ever and ever, that is like with the orthodox stance of the church this whole time. I hear that all the time. But when you say this is the orthodox position of the church throughout church history, what you're actually doing is picking a particular branch that from the beginning and just following the people who stayed on that branch up until now, ignoring all the other branches, and then other people can easily say universalism was the Christian Orthodox stance throughout all church history. But even then, you'd be doing the same thing. You'd just be picking a particular branch, but that branch does exist. And it's like, yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, I know a book that turned a lot of people on to questioning hell in the evangelical world was Love Wins by Rob Bell. Love Wins caused a huge stir. I mean, Rob Bell was like big evangelical superstar, and then he put out that book questioning hell and just breaking down, let's look at the words that sometimes are used for hell, the passages that seem to refer to hell, and realize what they're actually saying in the historical context and the Greek context, and also talk about the verses that talk about God saving everyone, which is plenty of those verses. And it's so I know, yeah, and through that he just totally got canceled evangelical version. And one of the biggest evangelical Calvinist preachers, John Piper, when the book trailer for Love Wins came out, John Piper just tweeted the link and said, "Farewell, Rob Bell." It's a huge, huge thing. Everyone who is an evangelical during like 2011 probably knows that story, or at least parts of it. But the I think yeah, John Piper. Also, I'll say this real quick too, like when we take a stance about the afterlife, there's really three big ones that have always existed. Three stances have always existed throughout Christian history, and all of them are justified by a particular list of scriptures. First off, there's the belief in that the literal eternal hell, that God's going to separate people and then throw a bunch of them away and be tortured forever and ever and ever. There's some verses that seem like that's what it's saying. And then the other one is annihilationism, which believes, okay, God's going to separate people and the good ones get eternal life with him and the bad ones just cease to exist, are annihilated. That's existed throughout all church history, and you can find verses to back that up. And then there's universalism, which is either, I mean, I guess, okay. I guess the modern understanding of universalism is just everyone just walks right into heaven. But I think OG Christian universalism would be there's a separation and people are sent into fire, but that fire is a pruning fire that it's like God destroys the sin, not the sinner. And there's plenty of verses to back that up. So when people take a stance, they're either quite literally or subconsciously picking a list of verses and using that as a lens to view the other ones. But all those stances are in there. And I think it's because they didn't know it was going to happen. But that all that was in there. Um, so yeah, it's like it's all about just which ones you think are more legit, I guess. But F Dog Music related to original sin. It's interesting that while the curse of Adam, doing hard physical work is okay to be mitigated nowadays via machinery, office work, etc. Meanwhile, the curse of Eve, child labor pains, is regarded by some right-leaning Christians as God's will. That should not be mitigated. Oof. Whoa. Those two messages making one paragraph is one of the like the best ways of breaking down the problem with patriarchy right there. Yeah, that is messed up. I never thought about it like that. But it's like it's very interesting. I don't know. I don't even know what to say with that. I feel like that's true that evangelicals do that or people do that and they should stop. I feel like that's all I could say to that. It's ridiculous. And I guess that's just an example of picking and choosing what verses to hold true to, being able to be like, yo, these verses, you can't escape that. But these verses, that was just cultural. That was just back then. We all do it. Um, but you have to do it responsibly, not to just serve your own agenda and your own interests. That's interesting. Annihilation is the goal in Buddhism. Oh yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that. I never thought about that distinction because it's like if, of course, for those that don't know, and my very limited educated take on this is like uh Siddhartha Gautama saw it as a great injustice, the idea of reincarnation and having to repeat life again and again and again. And because of the actions of your previous life, you end up joining these lower classes or lower castes. And even the people who are in the lowest castes, no matter what they do, are going to be born to the lowest caste again and again and again because they're undesirable. And so it's like, so let's achieve enlightenment so that we can end that cycle and don't come back. But and it's like, I think that shows too. I feel like I sometimes I hear Christians or people online say, I don't know, I want there to be an afterlife. I really want there to be eternal life. And if there wasn't, I feel like I wouldn't have hope. I hear that a lot and I don't relate. I kind of I get it when Siddhartha Gautama was strongly opposed to the caste. The cycle of birth and rebirth only perpetuated suffering. I get it when Gautama was saying that, where it's like, I think I feel like there is a type of hope that comes to the idea that this is all we have, and when we die, we're dead. I think that does sound hopeful. And it's funny. I guess it's just maybe through what I've read and studied and what I've been through. But to me, that just puts so much urgency on how you live your life right here and right now, and embracing everything because it's temporal. It's all temporary. I mean, it's all temporary. So embrace the people in your life, embrace purpose, and create meaning on this planet while you're here, and live the best life. Everything is meaningless, as Ecclesiastes 3 said. That's also what Ecclesiastes, or all of Ecclesiastes says everything is meaningless. But I think it's Ecclesiastes 3. When I just do it in right here. Hold on. The Old Testament believed that there was no afterlife. You just died. So hold on. Hey. Okay. Yep. What's up, Corwin? Hold on. I'm gonna find this. Ecclesiastes. We're gonna get there. My favorite book of the Bible. And most of the Bible is, most of this book is like, everything is meaningless. This is what I'm talking about. Let's see here. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 16. Hold on. Moreover, I saw. Oh, that's Coconut. What's up, Corwin? What's up? Corwin goes by Coconut Command on Twitch. I stream a lot on Twitch, by the way. Follow me on there if you're not following me. Twitch.tv/whoisdamon. Verse 16. Moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, wickedness was there, and in the place of righteousness, wickedness was there as well. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for he has appointed a time for every matter and for every work. I said in my heart with regard to human beings that God is testing them to show that they are but animals. For the fate of humans and the fate of animals is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, and humans have no advantage over the animals, for all is vanity, or in other translations, all is meaningless. All go to one place. All are from the dust, and all turn to dust again. Who knows whether the human spirit goes upwards and the spirit of animals goes downwards to the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better than all should enjoy their work, for that is their lot. Who can bring them to see what will be after them? That I feel like that's really what I believe, like on the daily. And maybe there's an afterlife, but it's like to me that's super hopeful. And maybe you got to go through something to read that and think that sounds hopeful. But I know there's a lot of Christians out there like, oh, that's so depressing. What about heaven though? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's heaven. We'll see, I guess. But also I think a lot of afterlife stuff really is from the Greeks, isn't it? All right, okay, yeah, of course. I mean, let me think. Oh yeah, I was gonna say maybe the Hindus, but no, that's reincarnation. So I guess the idea of there being this other place up there where you go after you die, hang out with the gods, and this other place down there ruled by Hades, where you go if you don't end up with the gods. That's all very Greek, Platonic model of the universe, three-tiered universe up there, here, down there, and I think as Greek thought got mixed with Judaism during the intertestamental period between the writing of Malachi and when Jesus showed up, it resulted in Jewish people seeing again and again and again oppression after oppression after oppression under the boot of empire after empire after empire, and now Rome, and seeing, okay, there has to be something else after this because this sucks. It's like we see people murdered for their faith when God said he would take care of us. So God has to reward them after, right? Because this is really messed up if God doesn't. And the people who are oppressing us, God has to do some sort of punishment, maybe after they die, right? Because we see them die and everything's fine. And so I think it came out of a desperation to adopt these ideas of an afterlife. And um, Jesus kind of plays off all that talk is in the air. And so he tells parables that they would get because that talk was always in the air in first century Judaism. And so it's and then when you get the separation of Judaism and Christianity, and after the temple was destroyed and Jews made really the center of their religion, not the temple, but the Torah, they just let go of that afterlife stuff, but Christians kept it. And so, yeah, it's all about here. It's all about right now, right here, right now. And, yeah, how y'all doing? By the way, Corwin here went to the climate strike yesterday in Sydney, Australia. How was that? And do any of you else in here? Sorry, I don't know how to talk. Does anybody else in here have any more questions or thoughts or stuff? Um, just a moment. It was great. Awesome. So yeah, so we also stream on Twitch every Tuesday and Thursday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And it's been really fun, really great. And the last night we actually looked up a little bit about our hero Corwin. We looked up a little bit about the climate strike in Sydney because we knew you were there, and we saw some pretty cool stuff and some pretty cool signs that people made. Thank you for creating your content. I discovered you through Gushin. Ooh, keep up the good work. Thank you. I love Gushin. And yeah, thank you for checking out my stuff. Thank you for commenting. Excuse me. What is your interpretation of the devil? I don't know. I know that the way I was raised, I mean, the way it was talked about in Pentecostalism that I grew up in before I left, I definitely don't buy into that anymore because it was talked about almost as if there's two gods at times. They would never ever say that ever, but they talk like it. Like there's these two large, powerful, omnipotent, omniscient forces, all powerful, all knowing forces, God and Satan. Remember that classic meme of Jesus and Satan arm wrestling? That's how Pentecostals talked about the devil growing up in my environment. And to me, that's like, I mean, you're getting into polytheism now. You're no longer a monotheist if you're going to talk about the devil like that. If you're going to talk about the devil as also all powerful, all knowing and all that stuff. So I yeah, so I've let go a lot of that. And I think at this point, I just believe in God. I don't necessarily think that the devil is weak shit. I don't think that there's another evil being out there. I think there's ways that we're all tempted to follow our most selfish impulses, and maybe that misunderstanding of what that is within us made humans throughout history refer to that as some sort of evil force. But yeah, I don't think I need it. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like I've let go of the devil because the concept of the devil is not helpful whatsoever to my spirituality. So I just don't care. Instead of, I mean, there's a lot of things that I've let go of evangelicalism that I could tell you, well, let me break down the historical context, the actual verses in the Bible to show you that this isn't actually this. But with the devil, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Who cares? I actually have a book called I need to read it. I've had it for like years and I haven't read it, but I feel like if I read it, I would have a better understanding of a more healthy understanding of the Bible. What is it called? Scratch. Oh, what was it? Um Scratch Devil Prison. I'm just saying random words. Oh, Reviving Old Scratch Demons and the Devil for Doubters and the Disenchanted by Richard Beck. I got the book a long time ago because I heard a podcast where he was talking about like, yo, I used to be this progressive Christian. I was like, there's no devil, there's no demons. And then I started doing prison ministry and witnessed a lot of evil and my experiences through that. And then actually studying the history of these ideas formed this book. So I need to read that. But any spicy Christian take? Wait, hold on. Corwin. Then I was leading at youth wearing my iron front shirt. Whoa! But no one at my church knew what it means. Praxis. No. Oh, wait. So you went with your church? That's kind of cool. Going to climate strike with your church, but wearing the iron front shirt to be like, yo, I'm here for a couple different reasons than y'all are here. Wow, that's really cool. But spicy Christian take. I don't know. I know some people would think every single one of my takes in my videos is a spicy Christian take. That's what's funny, by the way. Like if we're talking about evangelicalism, which is a corner of Christianity, and then there's all religion. The some Christians there though. If we talk about that, it's like this group of evangelicals would see almost everything I say as a spicy, hot Christian take. But if you get into like mainline Protestants, like Episcopalians, Lutherans, some Methodists, United Church of Christ, Disciples of Christ, it's just like normal. This stuff. It's not that big of a deal. I love telling this story. Let me tell you this. So when I was in the evangelical world, I was in this internship discipleship program in Orange County, and I became friends with this guy who just finished Bible college, and he was becoming the youth pastor at my church, and he was about to get his pastoral license through the denomination. And he knew that I kind of had some different thoughts on hell, and we had like little conversations about it before. And then one Sunday morning, he pulls me aside, very concerned and worried and kind of very urgent. And he said, "Hey, I gotta tell you something." He's like confessing to me. Like, so I was reading the book of Isaiah the other day, and I came across this verse, and I felt like I never read this verse before, or I never read it like this before. And I had a universalist thought. And he was so scared, almost like with the same level of heaviness as if an evangelical were confessing, I had a lustful thought about that, about somebody's wife or something like that. And it was, what the Daniel Mack, I know who you are. Daniel, my wife and I used to go there with you. That's true. I haven't talked to you in years, and you show up in my chat. And so Daniel was there at that church. I'm referring to Josh, by the way. He would be fine with me telling the story, probably. Okay, you'll see why by the end. But so he's like, yo, so I had a universalist thought. He was so scared. And he's like, I haven't told anybody. I haven't even told my girlfriend, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do." And I said, "Well, I think you should just like dive all the way in, like just search it out, really, like see what other people have to say." And he got like really scared and looked around. And he's like, "I'm about to be licensed." He was just so scared. And then I didn't know what to say to that. And then his girlfriend started coming up, and then he's like, "Okay, okay, we'll talk about this another time." And then we never talked about it again. And then years later, I go to the Episcopal Church for the first time in the city I'm in now. And I went on a Wednesday morning, they had a Wednesday morning service, and they had the common lecture. I referred to that earlier in the stream, the common lectionary. So it's like there's a set of scripture passages that you have to preach from that morning. And there was a parable from Luke where Jesus, I forget the exact parable, but it ends with Jesus saying, like, even though you'll knock on the door, I'm gonna kick you out and say, "Depart from me," and throw you out into the outer darkness and eternal damnation and stuff like that. And so she reads that, and then she closes it, and then she says, "Now, I don't agree with Luke." And then she goes into her own ideas and talks about how she feels like kind of a purgatorial universalism, where it's like that people who aren't in a relationship with Christ will go to some sort of purgatory, and then they'll go through some sort of pruning, and ultimately all will be saved. She just kind of broke that down. And I was in a room full of like 10 other really old white people, and all of them were like, "Yeah, of course." And that was mind blowing for me as an evangelical to be at a church where the priest, who was a lady, by the way, that was mind blowing in itself, and said, "I don't agree with Luke." And then afterward, I talked to her and the main priest, who was also a lady, and I was telling them about some of my journey, and I told them the story I just told you now about my friend confessing to me his universalist thought. And then they uh they responded with deep, deep laughter. They laughed so hard, which gave me permission to just laugh and laugh and laugh. And in that moment, I realized I would so much rather be in this environment than that one, where we can talk about this stuff and it be all safe and all okay, and just laugh at some of the ridiculousness of our fear around certain subjects. So I say that this is all in response to somebody being like, any spicy Christian takes. It's interesting how in one environment it's extremely spicy, in another environment we just laugh about it. So yeah. Anyway, Corwin said mostly to emphasize that not all Christians is a conservative. Oh, your church was there to emphasize not all Christians because our prime minister is a conservative Pentecostal. Oof. Um, Theory plea back, but still driving. Finally got caught up with your last few videos. By the way, people who've come in later in this stream, Theory Plebe is driving here to this room, to this house, and together we're gonna do a stream at 8 p.m. So it's 6:18, so 2 hours. 6:18 p.m. here right now, and then at 8 p.m. here right now, we're gonna do a stream on their channel. Theory Plebe makes some awesome videos about leftist politics and critical theory, and so we're going to talk also some about spiritual health on my series I just did, but they're going to really like bring it in with some good, juicy, deep critical theory. So it should be really fun. So y'all see that Theory Plea purple avatar right there? Go subscribe to them right now, and then join us in a couple hours for the stream on their channel. I want to see y'all in that chat and be like, "Yo, I'm here because you told me to." It would make me feel really good. Corwin said, "Not my church. They all back all the reactionary shit about the PM is doing. Other more progressive denominations. I haven't. Okay, yeah. So Corwin is in Australia. I have no idea what's going on in terms of the denominations in Australia. Definitely not. I uh, I feel like I could break it down pretty well how they're separated in the US, but yeah, I have no idea. So I can't even imagine. I mean, when you say progressive denominations, I know here that would mean Episcopalians, ELCA, Lutherans, United Church of Christ, Disciples of Christ. I don't even think United Church of Christ is in Australia. I don't know, whatever. I need to learn more. I need to know more. Isn't that how we constantly feel all the time? Especially when we're doing leftist videos, just constant. I wish I just knew more. By the way, I want to make a video with Theory Plebe probably tomorrow. I want to like film a video, not a stream. And I want to, they don't even know this, by the way. I'm saying this right here. I was going to tell them when they get here, talk a little bit about it. I was going to say, I want to do a video where we touch on that. So there's some stuff we said we want to talk about in the video that I'm going to make on my channel with them, and they're going to talk about their background in critical theory. But then I realized, like, that would be a really cool topic for both of us to discuss. Is in this environment, there's constantly people saying, you just need to read more theory. You know what? You wouldn't be acting the way you do. You wouldn't be talking the way you do if you just read more theory. Let me give you a list of books, and I've only read part of them. Or constant feeling like, I just feel inadequate because I haven't read theory. Theory plebe. I just finished something in schooling. I'm not sure for critical theory. And I feel like they've read tons of theory. They're like on the other end of like, or it's like Ecclesiastes. Oh, this is perfect correlation. Ecclesiastes, it says everything is meaningless because King Solomon is like, so throughout the whole of Ecclesiastes, it's like, so I try to chase after happiness through wisdom. And then I realized that didn't satisfy me. And I realized everything is meaningless. Then I tried through partying, realized everything was meaningless. Then I tried through working and realized everything was meaningless. Then I tried through building things and I realized everything was meaningless. It's like, I feel like Theory Plebe, this is my understanding at least, has read so much theory that they're on the other side and able to say, you know what? I read all the theory you could possibly read. Everything is meaningless. It didn't satisfy me like everyone out there in the breadtube space thinks it will. That's my theory about Theory Plebe. And so I think it would be cool to make a video kind of touching on that a bit. It's my favorite book of the Bible, Ecclesiastes. My favorite book too. I think there's probably some others in here that's their favorite book as well. That's so cool. By the way, speaking of spicy Christian takes, that's another thing. In evangelicalism, I would be in a room of evangelicals and say, Ecclesiastes is my favorite book. Now in this new space I'm in, whenever I say that, at least one or two other people say, that's mine too. Yeah. But that's just a theory. A theory. True. You're right. It's also mine, Faith. There we go. Yeah. Ecclesiastes. It's the best. So when I was a youth pastor, I did a whole series about Ecclesiastes. A whole series for the teenagers through each chapter of Ecclesiastes. And I also, Daniel Mack, it's mine. And every time I read it, I think of that one sermon you did. You know what's funny? For Daniel, he in Daniel's mind right now, he thinks, oh yeah, that one time that Damon did an Ecclesiastes sermon. But from my perspective, I'm like, which of the 100? I don't know which one he remembers, but I've done plenty. That's how much I love it. But I was gonna say, I did a series for the youth group, and when I was in Orange County at the church where Daniel was at as well at the time, I was doing helping with kids church a lot. And I decided I want to like teach, not just do these like what's it called? Not just do these curriculum that people get online and the way we teach kids church. I want to do like some original stuff. And so I developed a whole curriculum through Ecclesiastes for kids church. So I've done that too. I've taught the book of Ecclesiastes to little kids and teenagers and adults. And I love it. Daniel Mack was the one that changed my thinking. That's interesting. My understand tomfoolery. What's up, tomfoolery? My understanding, Daniel, is that like a lot of your change in thinking occurred after I left Orange County. So it's interesting to hear you say that. But because Daniel is also, since him and his wife left. My understanding, at least, is that you've left evangelicalism as well. Excuse me. But yo, dude, tomfoolery. The yes, we have. Yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting. It's a lot of people leaving. A lot of people still in it. Oh, by the way, sorry, I missed this. Corwin, to be honest, mine is probably James. Yeah, but I know why yours is James, because of all of the anti-rich verses in James. The gnarly verses in James that are just like, you rich people. Wait, I can't remember any. Come now, James 5. Come now, you rich people, weep and wail for the miseries that are coming to you. Your riches have rotted and your clothes are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have rusted and their rust will be evidence against you, and it will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure for the last days. Listen, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in pleasure. You have fattened your hearts on a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous one who does not resist you. Rich oppressors. All the spicy takes. Exactly. That's a good one, James 5. Yeah, Theory likes that one too. What else? Okay, let me think. Do I have a... Let me think of some of my other favorites. First John probably is up there too. My favorite, actually, maybe 4, which is where God is love comes from. I like 1 Corinthians a lot, but also mainly because 1 Corinthians 13, which was like love is patient, love is kind, and but no, 1 Corinthians 3 I like too a lot. So I feel like those are my favorite books right there. Ecclesiastes, 1 John, 1 Corinthians. Anything from the Old Testament? I mean, Ecclesiastes. Psalms are cool. Jonah is cool. This is the one non-compete read that one time in his video about Jesus. Yeah, I remember hearing that. Also, the only acceptable form of religion being caring for the oppressed and widows. Yeah, that's what James 1 says. The James 1:27, religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. Yeah. The Also, Revelation is really cool. Once you stop reading it like Left Behind writers read it, like about this future guy from Europe coming and being the Antichrist and stuff like that, realizing that the whole thing was actually a big FU to Roman imperialism. Once you're able to like understand that historical context, it's dope. But it's been so long since I've read the Bible, I need to get into it again. Get it. Just get it. Left Behind. I was a huge 1 Corinthians 13 makes me cry almost every time I read it. Corwin is a real one. Makes him cry. I feel you. Sermon on the Mount. That's a good one too. Matthew. Yeah, Jonah is so underrated. Yeah. I was super into Left Behind. I read all the books, watched all the movies. Oh, whoops. Hold on. Wait. I messed up. Sorry. I pressed the wrong button, Faith, and your message didn't come through. You said, at one point, I just thought white people are the Antichrist. Some of these messages like pop up for me to review and approve. And I think it did that because you had the word white people in it. And I accidentally put no. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, I was super in Left Behind. But I feel like looking back, though, I know that as a kid, I think it was just my version of science fiction, and I really liked it for that. But see, I had to approve that one, by the way. I'm a white people. I don't know why. It's probably a setting where I could find a way to un unban certain words and phrases, but whatever. But all right, I feel like we've done our job. We've got some good questions. Any last minute questions before we go? I'm about to end this. It's been a good stream. I've enjoyed talking to y'all. Y'all are awesome. And if you want to see me stream, like live stream Damon, follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/who is Damon. Faith and Corwin are in there a lot too. And um, yeah, thanks, Damon. Have you read The Prodigal Prophet by Tim Keller? Helped me realize how the book of Jonah is a F you to racism and nationalism. No, I didn't know Tim Keller would actually do that. Usually Tim Keller has bad takes, but yeah, I haven't read that. Oh, The Prodigal Prophet is a good name for Jonah too. But let's just say that real quick before we'll end with this. Jonah. When I was a kid, was taught as the message of Jonah was, look how powerful God is. Because there was this guy named Jonah, and God wanted him to preach to these people in Nineveh and get them to repent. And Jonah was like, no, I don't feel like it. Because he just wanted to do his own thing. Like we all want to do our own thing sometimes. Sometimes we don't always want to obey God. Sometimes we just want to do our own thing and disobey. We all are disobedient every now and then, right? So Jonah was disobedient. And so he ran away and ran and ran and ran. And he ended up on this ship. And then God caused a storm because God really wanted him to do it. And then God got they started like rolling dice on the ship and realized that he was the problem. So they kicked him off the ship and he fell into the ocean. And then a big old fish swallowed him. And the Bible says fish, but it was big enough to swallow him. So we're going to call it a whale. So it was a whale that swallowed Jonah. And he survived in there for 3 days. And he also prayed in there for when he was in the whale for 3 days and prayed that God would help him out and get him out of there. And then the whale 3 days later spit him out onto land. And then he's like, fine, I'll do it. And then he went to Nineveh and told them, y'all need to repent. And then they did. And then Jonah was like mad because they repented, and Jonah wanted to see God destroy them, because why would Jonah go all that way just for nothing to happen? And then God was like, what should I'm like the God of mercy. Should I not have mercy on all of these other people too? And also many animals? Now, that was how it was taught to me in kids' church. Here's some context. Nineveh was a major city of Babylon. This was during the exile, and therefore, leave out chapter 4. Yeah, and therefore, Nineveh, when an Israelite would hear Nineveh, they would hear, oh, those people that have oppressed us for decades upon decades, that I've seen people from Nineveh, I've seen Babylonians kill people I love and torture people I love and enslave people I love. It would God telling Jonah, go preach to Nineveh and tell them to repent, would be like God telling a conservative Christian American, go to ISIS and preach to them and tell them to repent. It would be like, no, obvious no, of course not. So him running away, the original hearers and readers would have been like, of course he's running away. That's crazy talk. Why would that happen? Particularly a nationalist is like, yeah, why would he go and preach to Nineveh? Of course he's running. And then there is this, God ends up saying, no, you have to. And then so that's the context. And then the way the story is written is very much like a satire. It's very much written like a symbolic, allegorical satire. And that's obvious throughout the whole thing, because of how ridiculous and silly and cartoonish the whole thing is. It's supposed to make you laugh. It's supposed to be kind of silly and out there. And that's why you have these guys on the ship throwing dice to figure out who was the problem. That's silly. Jonah thinking he can run from God by just running in one direction, running, and thinking that'll work. That's silly and cartoonish. That's supposed to make you laugh. And then Jonah being swallowed up by a fish. Also, my theory right now is that they probably wanted you to imagine a literal like little fish, like just a normal looking fish, and he swallowed Jonah. It's supposed to be like, whoa, that's ridiculous. And then it spits him out, and then he goes and he preaches. And then it says when they repented, the Ninevites and all their animals repented and put sackcloth and ashes on their head, a mourning practice, and repented together. Animals repented to God and put sackcloth and ashes on their head to mourn their sins. And then Jonah is angry, and God says, I'm the God of mercy. Should I not have mercy on all these people and also many animals? And it ends right there. Jonah doesn't say, oh, you're right, God, or no, I still think you're wrong, God. It just ends because the original listeners are supposed to then respond to that question themselves. Should I not have mercy on all these other people? So, casting lots is a common practice of other faiths. So, but that story is a satire to get you to question your nationalism. The Bible is way better, way deeper than you may have ever been told. Spirituality is way bigger and better and deeper than what you may have been told. Christianity, Jesus is way bigger and better and deeper than what you may have been told. Trust me, there's so much room outside of conservative evangelicalism or of new age thought, like I know some people have kind of walked away from. There is so much room. Okay? So, everyone in here. Oh yeah, the disciples did it in Acts. I feel like that probably didn't happen either. I feel like that's kind of silly as well. Anyway, okay, never mind. There we go. So thank you all for enjoying this Q&A, joining in this live stream, and for being commenting a lot. What? It's another conversation, Corwin. We'll talk about it another time. I think I'm here. And Theory Plebe is here. So I'm ending the stream right now. And go subscribe to Theory Plebe. And we're going to do a stream in an hour and a half on their channel. So go subscribe, meet me there, and be like, yo, I came from your video. Yo, I just subscribed to Theory Plebe. It'll make me extremely happy. See y'all. Bless y'all. Bye-bye.